All right. Good morning, everyone. We are here today with Olle Johansson. I am Doe Kelly of Longmont, Colorado, and the group that is sponsoring this Zoom call today is known as TechSafeSchools Longmont. Um, Barbara Muser is my co-host today. Barb, wave. People can see who you are. And so she's going to be monitoring both the chat and admitting people and just watching to see who comes in and out. We have been showing some community, we've been hosting community showings of EMF related films at this point. And in one of those films called Resonance Beings of Frequency, which deals with the pollinators and the Schumann resonance, we promised that Olle Johansson would come to our meeting via Zoom. Now, we were doing this at the Longmont Library, and unfortunately, even though we did the tech rehearsal and everything worked well, by the time we got to the event, we had had so many technical issues, and we were just we were hanging by a thread. We actually managed to get Olle into the library, but only for about 25 minutes, but he was not able to be broadcast through the system there. But there were some of you on that call who actually got to hear him speak. And I know Nancy Vandover, I believe, interviewed Olle basically while we are running around to tear down the room and get out of there. Olle was speaking. So none of us heard anything that he said that day in particular, except you people who were zooming in from elsewhere. So we promised the audience that anybody who wanted to, that we would show, or we would bring Olle in to a Zoom and invite you all again. And so we've got probably 20 or so people on this call today. Thank you very much for coming and being part of this very special presentation with Olle Johansson, because we have a problem. It's called disappearing pollinators and disappearing bees. And as I just stated, Olle said he has a pollinator that's flying around in his apartment right now, and it's a fly, and he's going to let it be there and just let it be, no pun intended in terms of bees. But I'm going to ask everybody to keep themselves muted unless they're called upon to speak. We'll be monitoring the chat. If you need to move around at home, would you please turn your video off so it's not distracting visually to the rest of the call? We're going to be posting a lot of different resources and links in the chat, including, first and foremost, the link to Olle's webpage that gives all of his bio, a number of videos, just a lot of information, but more importantly, also has a link to where you can donate to his research. So we'd like to ask you, and I'd like to ask you personally, if you are able to donate to Olle's research. It's very much needed, and we're very appreciative if you do. So in the past 5 years in Longmont, there's just a little bit of background. There has been a group of people, and I raised my hand to say that I guess I'm one of the originals. I'll raise my hand right there. I'm one of the original people who started speaking out at City Council right before and during the lockdowns of the pandemic, because they were going to be bringing in smart meters to the city. And I and a few other people had been keeping kind of an eye on this eventuality of this possibility. We didn't think it was going to happen here, but then all of a sudden there was an announcement that they were going to be studying it. So my neighbor who was a good friend who had said, actually her activism had helped to halt fracking in the city limits of Longmont. And she said to me, if all of this electromagnetic pollution is coming in, maybe you're the one to start talking out about it, because she knew that I had been involved in electromagnetic radiation protection products for a lot of years, and we'd talked about it a lot. And so I said, oh, I really don't want to do this. And so I went and did it. Right. So anyway, I started speaking out at City Council, and I found that I had quite a voice for speaking out. And others over time joined me until there was more of a chorus of people who were speaking at our city, saying there's many reasons to reconsider this rollout of smart meters. And so during that time, we did just as a grassroots sort of thing. I was involved with a Thursday night meeting during the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, where we were talking about our losses of freedoms, et cetera. And so we decided that we wanted to do a town hall meeting, and it would be called a Smart Meter Town Hall. Excuse me. And our honored guests were Olle Johansson, Cece Doucette of Massachusetts for Safe Technology, Tim Sheckley of Boulder, who's an expert in technology and helped develop smart meters. He's right in our midst. And Susan Foster, who writes about smart meter fires and cellular fires. And it was this wonderful panel. The link will be in the chat. It's a 2-hour presentation if you care to go and watch it. And Olle spoke all about our disappearing bees, disappearing pollinators. And then after that, I asked him, would you write a letter to the city of Longmont on our behalf? And so he did, because Olle is a world famous, a world renowned EMF researcher, and his reputation precedes him wherever he goes. And so our relationship over time has just, it's mostly by email, a couple of Zoom calls here and there, but we love Olle and we love his work. And I'm going to read to you a little bit of his bio. So who exactly is Olle Johansson? And I say Ulle, Ule, because he was trying to teach me yesterday how to pronounce it. Of course, I have a background in singing, classical singing and some languages, so I can imitate a little bit. Ulle, would you please say your name so I can imitate it better?
Yeah, that's Olle.
Olle, Olle.
Yes.
I'll never get it right on this call, but anybody, you can call him Olle because people do, and he responds to it. But who exactly is this guy? Okay, first of all, he's a Swede. And I'm sure he'll tell you some things about being a Swede, because he was telling us all about being a Swede in the last couple of days when we were talking with him. In 2017, he stepped away from academia. He's retired, but he's still active in this field. He had been an associate professor and head of the experimental dermatology unit, Department of Neuroscience at the Karolinska Institute, which is famous for its Nobel Prize, and it's located in Stockholm, Sweden. He's considered a world-leading authority in the field of EMF radiation and health effects. He's known for he coined the term screen dermatitis, which later became the functional impairment electrohypersensitivity, or EHS, which many of you will have heard of at this point. Certainly, we've used that terminology at our city council many times. The worldwide recognition of EHS is mainly due to Olle's work. He's also been a guest professor as well as an adjunct professor in basic and clinical neuroscience at the Royal Institute of Technology, also in Stockholm. He's published more than 800 original articles, reviews, book chapters, and conference reports within the fields of basic and applied neuroscience, dermatoscience, epidemiology, and biophysiology. If you look for him online, you will find him in print and video nearly everywhere, because his reputation absolutely precedes him. He's all over the place. And yet there he is in Sweden right now. So we are so lucky and very, very grateful, Olle, for you coming here to be our follow-on event from Resonance Beings of Frequency, which we learned after we had scheduled this movie that Olle's latest research has to do with the Schumann resonance and with the disappearing pollinators, the honeybees' relationship to the Schumann resonance, among other. And so it fit right in with our presenting resonance movie. And for those of you who don't know, Resonance Beings of Frequency is available online to view for free. So first of all, I would like to ask you, Olle, would you briefly tell us what happened to you on Wednesday, on your birthday, that led to you calling me on the phone from Sweden, totally out of the blue, unexpectedly?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have been blocked from Google, all the different types of services. And that happened while I was sending out the last, most recent interviews, three of them. So everyone has not received them yet. And I'm trying and trying and trying to get back to my email account. But so far, I have not been able to succeed. And that, of course, hampers me a lot and handicaps me. But at the same time, I have to be Swedishly, I would call it brutally honest. We have a minuscule research economy, so anyone who could give a single dollar will make a huge difference. And we can do very, very little, I'm sorry to say, but we do have collaborations, for instance, with Danielle Favre in Switzerland. And I will come back to that because that is about the honeybees and the impact of artificial man-made electromagnetic signals, as well as the removal of Schumann resonances, the
Mhm.
electric component of it.
Yes.
But more about that later on.
Okay, wonderful. So the phone rang at 5 minutes past 12 on August the 13th, which was Wednesday, and I picked it up, totally unexpecting a call, not expecting a call from Olle Johansson calling from Sweden. At midnight the night before, I had sent him an email on his Gmail account saying, here's the details for the call, here's the link to get on the call. And by the way, happy birthday, because the 13th, the Wednesday, when Ole is dealing with all of this stuff, he was blocked and locked out of his Gmail account. So here he is calling me. He had to scramble to get my phone number because he didn't have it. He got it from Christine Zips. And I'm going, oh, I think I recognize this voice. This accent sounds very familiar. And I said, is this Ole? And he said, yes, it is. And he said, I'm talking on WhatsApp. Do you have WhatsApp? And I said, well, I really don't deal much with cell phones because of the electrosensitivity. And I said, I actually probably have it on my phone, but I haven't fully been able to use it. He said, well, I'm forced to go to WhatsApp now. And because I've been locked out and blocked from my Gmail account, I've been on the phone for 4 hours speaking with Google today, and they couldn't give a toss, his exact words, they couldn't give a toss if this has anything to do with the disappearing pollinators or not. And so Ole is locked out of his Gmail where he has lots of things stored and lots of research and goodness knows what, because I don't know, it's not my account. But the reason that he is showing up the way he is showing up on this call today is he's on his phone, which puts him in the more narrow rather than the wide view. So he's broadcasting to us today through WhatsApp, and I presume through a wired connection. But I have a quote I'd like to read to the group, and it's from Maria Sargent August. She was a practicing American Buddhist who took her own life in 2019 due to the debilitating condition of EHS or electrohypersensitivity, which is now also being renamed or rebranded as EMRS, electromagnetic radiation syndrome. And she wanted to publicly publicize this situation by self-euthanasia, and she did commit suicide. And then the way she planned to publicize this cause was with a self-written obituary. Now, we're not going to read this obituary, but it will be posted in the chat for those of you who don't know it and haven't read it. But here's the quote, and this is what she said about herself. When I first became aware that I was sick due to electromagnetic fields or EMFs, I was shocked that such a condition existed, then stunned as it proliferated to the degree of severe and debilitating EHS. As the sickness and symptoms snowballed, it prevented me from working, being in public spaces, seeking health care, and socializing with friends. I now find myself in the paradoxical position of needing to be housebound, yet there's nowhere to live. It seems everywhere has Wi-Fi, smart meters, cell phones, and towers, not to mention TV, radio, computers, motors, and compact fluorescent lighting. Um, Catapulted into this obscure and isolating universe, I have discovered I am not alone. And that's the end of the quote. And I thought it was so poignant. It's not her obituary, which is incredibly poignant, but it speaks to this condition, electrohypersensitivity or EMRS. And Ole, could you tell us approximately how many people suffer from this condition in the world? And how many know that they suffer from it? How many are likely disabled by it? And is there one particularly famous woman of high office who suffered from this while she held that office? I'm going to let you have at it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's start with electrohypersensitivity, which is recognized as a functional impairment or nowadays functional variability. Uh, and that's what we used to call disability, and before that, handicap. I want to stress that I am strongly against changing name. You should not do that. That's a huge mistake. You would never allow anyone to change names on historical sites or artifacts. You would leave them as they are because you otherwise effectively cut away all the historical threads. So please go with the World Health Organization and use the UN declaration identification of the functional impairment electrohypersensitivity. As you say, there is quite a number of people around the world, and the lowest number ever calculated is in the order of 350 million people. But there are other calculations pointing to, and especially looking into people that are not aware of their electrohypersensitivity, saying that it could be up to 1 billion people of the 8.2 billion people on the planet. So it's a huge, huge number of persons that are electrohypersensitive. I also would like to stress that with all due respect, we should not forget about the other 8.7 million species. One of them being honeybees, another one houseflies, and so on. And when it comes to pollinators, everyone basically is a pollinator. Human beings are pollinators when they walk around. Mice, rats, birds, and a whole variety of insects. And the sort of premier representative of the pollinators, for various reasons, are always the honeybees. But numerically, they are actually not that important for nature as such. They are very important for the honeybee based industry, yes. But the world consists of so much more than beehives. That's also very important to think about.
Ole, I'd like to interject here that before letting you go on about this, I have at least one friend who said she's pollinating her own garden this year. She's going out and doing the pollinating by hand.
Yeah,
And I've heard that from other people as well. Plus, I'm noticing in our own very tiny little garden that when there are bees out there, there's very few honeybees, few bumblebees, but there are more than I've noticed before, little bitty
yeah,
bees
yeah.
buzzing around.
Yeah, and that's a very important notification that when one type of bees, for instance, are disappearing, of course, the void may be filled by other bees or other insects, but still it's not enough. And as you know, if we talk about Canada, We can start there. More than 90% of the honeybees are gone. In the United States, it's more than 90% also of the bumblebees. In Europe and Scandinavia, we are quite well off. We have only lost in the order of 75%. But of course, it is a catastrophe. And people do investigate and discuss this. But unfortunately, always when I contact different groups, they have never heard about man made artificial electromagnetic signals, fields, and radiation. And they are not interested because they have already made up their mind that the loss of all these insects is due to, for instance, viruses. It could be pesticides, it could be insecticides, it could be changes in the farming landscape, and so forth. And I'm not naive. I do realize that they also help bringing down the number of pollinating insects. But as you know, when scientists many, many years ago actually did some rather simple studies, they saw that, for instance, honeybees and cell phone radiation doesn't seem to go hand in hand. And I think it's extremely important to react and act while we still have time. And it's so odd because right now in Sweden, we have huge billboard ads talking about how you, as a gardener, can help the honeybees and the bumblebees by planting more flowers and more flowers of the type they like. But when I contacted the World Wildlife Fund Sweden, they were they were completely uninterested in my ideas and my field. So again, I get a bit stressed, and therefore we have started various collaborations. I mentioned Daniel Favre in Switzerland, and we have done studies together where we try to understand how the honeybees in this case are sensitive to man-made radiation sources like cell phone radiation, but also our most recent paper, and I'm so happy I was able to send it out before I was blocked. Maybe that was the reason I was blocked, I don't know, but it showed that if we encapsulate the beehives and remove the natural fields, the Schumann resonances that are dependent on thunderstorms at a very high level in the atmosphere, if they are removed or blocked, then the queen will not produce any fertile eggs any longer. And for me, that's such a simple experiment with such a clear-cut outcome. So it needs to immediately be replicated, being made in a much larger number of beehives and so forth, not being turned away from, as the World Wildlife Fund in Sweden did. So we are trying, but it's very, very difficult. And we're the coming week, I will have discussions or meetings with, or what do you say in English, risk capitalists. And I'm trying to convince them that instead of building a new rocket or bomb or whatever, maybe they could use their money to study the decline of pollinators. And it's so fascinating that you bring this up because some years ago I had a letter from a friend in Canada, and he wrote the following: Olle, in my garden, I used to have a lot of different birds, but I don't see any of them any longer. What has happened? And I wrote back and said, I don't know, but maybe you can send me a list of the birds that you don't see any longer. And maybe I could deduct from that what has happened. And he made a list. It was a pretty long list. And I wrote back again and said, well, from this list, it's very easy to tell you what has happened. All these birds are insect eaters, and there are no insects any longer. So they are gone. And he was very sad about that. And he wrote back again and said, well, I have actually noticed on my car window that I don't need to clean it nearly at all because there are no smashed dead insects on it. So I realized something was going on, and now I get the end result in my garden. So I think we need to step up the interest here, and I'm prepared to do whatever I can do. And the key here is, and we talked a little bit about that yesterday, it's very important that any study is performed in such a way so it is using only standardized conditions and in a controlled fashion, uh, following the consensus model in science, because otherwise the outcome can rightfully, I would say, be questioned, and that would delay the reaction time of politicians, civil servants, and they are doing a wonderful job, no question about it. But they need to have the true facts, facts with a big F, on their table so they can approach and go to others and say, hey, we need to do this instead. And I am completely prepared also to find in a controlled setup that maybe the electromagnetic fields, they don't do any harm. But we need to ascertain the outcome before we try to act from a societal point of view. So there is quite a lot at jeopardy here. And as you know, Joe and all the people on this call, if we look around the planet on all types of species, there is such a dramatic decline in the number of a certain species, and many species are actually at the very edge of extinction. And when I ask biologists, they say, we don't know why. And again, with all the satellites spanning the planet, you can use your cell phone even in the north of Sweden, no problem. It's very, very isolated areas, but the satellites made it possible. And that means, of course, a lot of irradiation. And again, I'm just afraid that we have put ourselves in a corner where we are actively killing off life on the planet. And I say again, I will eat my hat. If I'm wrong, no problem, but we need to investigate this. So I hope to be able to do it.
So, Ole, we actually have at least one educator on this call who works in the school systems and also in local politics. And, how could she actually take this into the schools, into the science department? Or, could they actually be devising experiments that would be of that sort of level where a simple experiment where they could deal with the Schumann resonance and honeybees and demonstrate it for themselves so that the students would begin to learn.
That's a very, very interesting suggestion and a very good idea. But I'm sorry, I said I'm a Swede and we are dull and boring and brutal. And I would say no. Don't spend any time on that. We don't have that time. Collect from all the parents, the politicians, the civil servants, all the money you can get hold of, and use it in a directed experiment setup. And it's not easy to, for instance, manipulate the Schumann resonances. It's extremely difficult and very costly. So no, I would actually call this professor in Stockholm, Sweden.
Call you.
Yeah, yeah. I would take the shortcut, to engage pupils, students, teachers, and so on. No, you don't have time for this.
Okay. We're on the edge. We're on the precipice.
Yeah,
I mean,
and of course they are very important. Uh, um, I mean, I love the old black and white movie with James Stewart, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Maybe you need to go to the House of Representatives, the Senate, and to the White House and demand reaction and action. And I'm prepared to collaborate with anyone, including your president. So that's not the problem. And you and I, we don't count here. It's the future that counts.
mm,
And you know, every time when I see children here in Stockholm, for instance, I, I'm ashamed because I think we should do a lot more now.
yeah. Um, I'd like to ask you to tell our audience about the artificial background radiation that we're subject to versus how much we actually evolved through. And that's not just the human perspective, but that's
Yeah.
all life on the planet. And how is this
Yeah.
affecting us?
Yeah. Um, you can always take whatever form of electromagnetic fields or radiation and compare it with the natural background in that frequency domain. And then you can immediately realize that the smallest increase compared to the natural background of the man made electromagnetic fields, and man made meaning the last 100 to 150 years, that would be the power frequent magnetic fields, which is a long name for household electricity. The increase of such fields compared to natural background is only 100 million times. I repeat, only 100 million times. If we go to cell phone radiation, depending on how you calculate and which type you calculate, it is at least a quintillion times higher compared to natural background. That's a one with 18 zeros behind. And if you make a more, should we say, truthful calculation, the increase is actually infinite.
Well,
It's a,
so yeah, so when you're thinking about this on a sort of a visual, in a visual way, on a practical basis, that everybody that's walking around with a cell phone in their pocket is
yeah,
part of this ginormous field of
yeah,
electromagnetic radiation smog. Is that what you're
yeah.
saying?
Yeah, of course. And we live in it, and we have done it for quite a number of years, starting with the introduction of electricity and then other forms of, for instance, microwave based fields for wireless telecommunication. But there are so many different types. It could be amateur radio, it could be television, it could be professional radio, it could be radar, and so on. You know, there are so many different ones, and they all form this enormous soup, and at exposure levels that are, even for me as a scientist, it's hard to grasp. And I'm trying to find words to describe it for the general audience. Is it astronomically higher, or is it colossal increases, or are there biblical increases, or what are we talking about? And if we go back to the smallest increase being 100 million times, I think even in Colorado, that if the outdoor temperature would increase 100 million times, nothing of the United States would then exist. And if we increase, you know, to quintillion times and higher, not even the planet can take such increases in temperature. So
Well,
why should we turn our back on the wireless telecommunication increases?
well, I'm not turning my back on it. And
No,
so,
neither do I, but
yeah, yeah,
most people do. And
yeah.
though you can hate me afterwards, but
Oh,
uh, you know, right now I think we have a problem in front of us which we don't see, but I see it because I think you said you had was it 20 or 30 persons on this call? Yeah. Where are the other 330 million Americans, not counting Canada?
Mhm. That's a
Where are they?
that's a good question. And
Yeah.
let's see. Denial is not a river in Egypt. They are in denial,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay, so I mean, how do we deal with the problem of denial? Because as you know, you were denied by the World Wildlife Fund,
yeah, yeah,
Sweden, the lady who
yeah,
said, "Oh no, we're only dealing with climate and nature," and you're going,
yeah,
"What?" And
yeah,
I put your quote out in a post that I recently posted.
yeah,
Is like it's just shocking to hear
yeah,
from an official at the World Wildlife Fund say we're only to just diss you that way.
yeah,
But
yeah,
there's a number of organizations here locally, and People and Pollinators, I think, is one of them. That's what they're called. And I've spoken at various little outdoor fairs with a couple of their people, and they're in total denial that EMFs have any relationship to the decline of pollinators. And I'm not saying that it's all EMFs, all wireless, all high voltage lines, or anything like that. I'm saying there's a component that goes into this tapestry of the varroa mites and the pesticides, the neonics, and coating of seeds before they sprout in neonics, and all the things that are taking place, plus the satellites
yeah,
coming in
yeah.
from out of space and Elon's, Starlink and so forth. How could you even distinguish scientifically what was doing what? I mean, I know that scientists can probably distinguish to a degree that the pesticides are doing this, but what about the EMF factor? That's what I began calling it, the EMF factor. And I think we should sort of brand that the EMF factor for our disappearing species, in
Yeah.
particular the pollinators.
That's a very good point you raised there, you know. And going back to the person on this call, being from the local council, I think one very important thing for any politician or civil servant is to inform, educate, and inform. And that's what I do all the time. I try to educate and inform. And I think you have heard my story 2 or 3 years ago when I entered a commuter train here in Stockholm. There was a very posh lady in her 60s, and she was fiddling around with her smartphone. And I leaned forward and said, "Do you know that your smartphone uses electromagnetic signals that the World Health Organization in Geneva, in Switzerland, has cancer classified?" And she looked with hatred at me and said that I was just imagining things. I didn't know what I was talking about, and I should actually go to a very warm place. And then I said, "No, wait, wait, wait. You have a smartphone. Couldn't you please Google WHO, brain tumor, and cell phone?" And she actually did. And she went silent for a minute or two, and then she slowly looked up and said, "Oh, I'm awfully sorry. You are completely right. It's all here." And now I get very angry again, but not at you, but I get angry at my government, my parliament, my health authorities. Why have they not informed me? You see, I'm not only a mother, I'm also a grandmother. And last week, I gave my granddaughter a brand new cell phone, and now I regret it. At that point, I had to leave the train, unfortunately, but she was very, very agitated, but also thankful. So I always do this, try to inform and educate. And people, they listen, I promise, they listen. And the only thing that I get a little bit angry with myself is that when they have listened and they have said, "Oh, this is the most important they have heard for years." And then I come with my little hand, and say, "Could you put $1 there?" Then they go, "No, no, that should someone else do." But who should do it?
Right, because you're outside of academia and funding from
Yeah,
employment and so forth and so
yeah,
on. You're an independent operator in
yeah.
that respect and need funding from other sources. And that would be,
Though, even if I was inside, why should you not support the future of your children?
mhm.
Because without the pollinators, and you see it so clearly here in Sweden, and I know you see it in other countries. In Sweden nowadays, I'm sitting right now in the middle of the farming landscape. They only farm nowadays cereals like oat, barley, and so on, um, because they are wind pollinated. And when I talk to farmers, they say, oh, you see, we can't farm the crops we used to because they are dependent on pollinators and they are gone. So we need to shift to a barley, oat, wheat, etc. And also rape seeds are very popular nowadays in Sweden, and they are self-pollinating. So you don't need any insects either. And you mentioned before that you can hand pollinate as a human being, and that is used a lot, for instance, in China, because they have a huge population which they can force out on the fields. But in Sweden, you cannot do that. We are, well, kind of a democracy, so it's difficult to force people to do anything here, and therefore the farmers have shifted. And when you look out right now, it's mid-August, the whole landscape is yellowish in a yellow color because it's only cereals everywhere. So
Well,
if you like bread, welcome to the future.
well, and I know that that's like somebody, I don't remember the publication, but somebody went in 10 years or more ago and they photographed inside of a grocery store. And then they took away all of the things that were going to disappear if the pollinators left.
Yeah,
And it left you with the rather dull looking vegetables. They were
yeah,
brown and gray and some white.
yeah,
And so it'll be bread. You know,
yeah.
we'll survive on bread, will we? Well,
And it's easy to find this couple of photographs on the internet,
mhm,
so you can easily see it. And when you see it, it's an American food store. You are shocked,
yeah.
because, as you say, the store is basically empty.
Mhm. I believe it was in a Whole Foods somewhere, and all the
Yeah,
color is gone. It's
yeah,
just
yeah,
gone.
yeah.
So we got to talking about 5G the other day on with Ole, and I'm going to show a picture later of the map of 5G in Boulder, Colorado, because they're just really putting these small cells up willy-nilly, probably with plans to be a smart city. But I would like, Ole, for you to tell us what happened on Cyprus when they added a 5G tower there. That was what, citizen scientists who quantified what was happening and sent you her research.
Yeah, that was not in Cyprus. It was in Greece,
In
at
Greece,
the
okay.
yeah, in the island Samoa, and there was a dramatic loss. And maybe the reason for that is that the wavelength of 5D, and I don't know if you can see it, it's about this size. And that's the size of a bumblebee, of a honeybee, of a wasp, whatever. It's in the order of an inch, and they will then become body resonant, which is a way of saying that they will take the energy and absorb it very effectively, like an animal antenna. And therefore, they are much more affected than species that are bigger or smaller. Um, so again, um, I would love to be able, because the lady here, Diana Cordas, she has done a very detailed job, but it needs to be controlled and replicated, because
Mhm.
otherwise the other side will say, no, this is not academic science, and you didn't do this and that and see and so, which is academically correct. But then please, if you criticize such a detailed work, then you need to hand over the money and say, okay, give it to the most critical academic scientists so they can replicate the study and see was it correct or not.
Yeah. Well, so I just want to remind, because some people probably came in a little bit late, but somewhere in the chat, and hopefully we will have it in several places in the chat. I'm not keeping up on the chat, but we have posted a link or the URL to Professor Johansson's webpage that has a way to donate. And we want to personally ask you to support his work if you are able by going to that page and giving as you can. Um, I want to open up the topic of the blood-brain barrier and what EMFs do to the blood-brain barrier so people can understand a little bit better how being in ubiquitous fields of microwave radiation, which is what the carrier waves for these packets of data, these signals that we're being surrounded and immersed in all the time. What does this do to our blood brain barriers, and therefore what does that do to us?
That's a very good question.
And what
And
define the blood brain barrier?
yeah, the blood-brain barrier is a so-called functional barrier, but it's made up of certain cell types, and the idea is that it should be a semi-permeable sieve, letting some things in and out of the brain area, but most are kept outside. Or kept inside. There should be no leakage. But many research groups already starting in the 1970s, so that's 50 years ago, could demonstrate that if you irradiate, for instance, rats with cell phone radiation, then the blood brain barrier starts to leak, and it starts to leak at an exposure level which is 5,000 times below the Colorado guidelines. So it's a very weak, and it only takes one single minute to have the blood-brain barrier start leaking. And in the body, there are other such barriers, very similar. One very famous is the blood testis barrier, protecting the sperm cells. And as you know, both in United States, Canada, and Europe, the sperm cell quality, motility, viability has gone dramatically down. And there could be a multitude of reasons for that. But again, having the research already published pointing to man-made electromagnetic radiation being one of the causes makes me at least say, well, we need to quickly establish the true hard facts here. Finally, the most famous such barrier is the blood placenta barrier, which will protect the fetus, which from the beginning is so small, so I can have it between my pressed fingers. And you don't want any leakage there. But again, with all the problems surrounding pregnancies and childbirth and children, their development mentally and so on, again, please, shouldn't we investigate this before it is too late?
I know that in recent times in the news over here, and that would be in the last few months, I know that they've spotlighted the increase in colorectal cancer. And when I hear this on our news, I just go, well. 5 or 6 years ago, I recall being at a hearing, it was a city council meeting in Boulder, and it was a hearing on 5G, a study session, I believe. And Deborah Davis, as we know, is a important scientist who has worked in this similar field with EMFs, and she called in and gave her testimony, and she talked about the increase of colorectal cancer in a
Yeah,
particular age range. It was something like, I don't know, 18 to 40 or whatever. And it's
yeah.
kind of like saying, well, gee, what could be contributing to that when people put their cell phones in their back pocket or even in their front pocket for fertility. And then pregnant mothers sit reading or having a laptop on their bellies. And,
Yeah, yeah,
and now, there's all of the news about the decline in population in the world. And all of this, in my opinion, is contributed to, it may not be all of what it is, but it's contributed to, and probably hugely so, by the ubiquitous EMF in our everyday life. And my father-in-law, at one point, 10 or 15 years ago, when he was still alive, he had been a scientist at Porton Down in England, if you know what that is. And he was sitting in our living room visiting here in Longmont. And we were talking about this EMF topic because I've been talking about it since the early 90s myself, being someone who has sold electromagnetic protection products since the early 90s, since I learned about it, and a subtle energy practitioner as a Reiki practitioner, and someone who could do some kinesiology or muscle testing. And I could see the effects of EMF. And then, of course, it proliferated. But anyway, my father-in-law said to me, do you realize if we could see all of the radio waves and whatever it happens to be coming off of a radar tower, a cell tower, whatever, at the time he was talking about, we'd be sitting in a completely blackened room. And that just stuck with me over time, because I'm sitting right now 25 feet down from a smart meter on this side. I'm in conjoined townhomes. There's a smart meter over here. There's a smart meter 20 feet down over there. And then behind me, there's rows of them. And in front of me, there's rows of them. And so maybe they don't entirely broadcast a great distance. Maybe they do, but they're all talking to each other and they're creating this mesh network. And we are all caught in it. And that's what I was seeing when I was looking at this map of Boulder, Colorado, as these small cells are coming in. And whether they're operational yet, I haven't been able to figure out. I think maybe there are some that are. But anyway, we got trouble right here in River City, and that's the world. But I have taken to saying at times to people, where would you like your tumor? And so if you'd like it here, go ahead and put that live cell phone right there in your bra and keep it there. And pretty soon, it may take a few years. I'm not sure exactly, but then you'll have something in the shape of a cell phone, or it will show where those antennas on your cell phone were. And that is what has been shown in the science that keeps coming up, like a bad meal.
yeah. And I could add, I agree with the blackened room. It would be completely black. You wouldn't see even your hand in front of you, but that would be the same outdoors. Uh, Everything would be completely black if you could visualize and see all the signals.
So then
And
it would be fair to say that our modern world is becoming oh, no, it already became an open air microwave oven and is in the
yeah,
process of becoming even more so.
yeah, yeah.
So
And
we're frying.
yesterday, internationally, there was a very detailed article about the colorectal cancers having increased 3 times in the young, and to such a level so the experts, they just shake their heads and say no, we can't explain this. And as you say, it's not rocket science to say, well, is there something in the back pocket of people? Yes, there are cell phones, cell phones, cell phones everywhere.
Yeah. And then there are some of us who are fortunate or unfortunate to take a cell phone in our hand and within 1 minute or less, it's like, I can't stand this. Because, as a Reiki practitioner, I'm sensitive energetically. Even before I was a Reiki practitioner many decades ago, I was probably sensitive. We didn't have cell phones then, but
Yeah.
I can't hold one in my hand without feeling a lot of discomfort. I can't be next to one or in close proximity for 5 minutes without my tongue beginning to burn and the symptoms beginning to come up. And I know that there are people on this call who experience their own brand of these symptoms. They start in different ways, and I know mine, but there's other people. And as you put it with the statistics, if 350 million people at minimum, if if
Yeah,
you get up to 1 billion who are
yeah,
sensitive already, and
yeah,
the hypothesis is that everybody is, because we're electrical in our nature, in our
yeah,
biology,
yeah,
and then we take into account the what Martin Paul was able to bring to the world in terms of weak fields and non-ionizing radiation, which is what the microwave radiation is non-ionizing. And so we're surrounded by this non-ionizing radiation, but it gets into our cells and what are called voltage gated calcium channels, and wreak havoc with a whole cascading of elements in the body that causes things to go haywire. And then you end up with fibromyalgia or multiple chemical sensitivity or EHS or all of these different things. And they say, well, we don't know how to diagnose that. Oh, it doesn't exist. It's all in your head. So how do we get out of this it's all in your head nonsense, or people not taking someone like me or some of the people on this call seriously when we say we are affected by this radiation and something needs to be done, and it needed to be done 15 years ago?
yeah. That's a very important comment, and um, I can only really speak for Sweden. Here it's easy. If someone would try to demean you by calling your names like it's in your head, then you file an official complaint.
Wow.
And that situation would basically never happen here, because people are very they are very afraid of getting such filings into their offices and so on. So they wouldn't try to ridicule or demean you in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But of course,
Mm-hmm.
in other countries, the situation may be different. And
Right.
having listened to this very important story of yours, I guess you love when I nowadays, and since many years back, I call the electron hypersensitives the new normal. And the previously normal people, like myself, we are electro hyposensitive, because we don't react like the canary bird in the coal mine to this toxic environment. But the electro hypersensitives, they have a natural and correct avoidance behavior. They do react to these colossal biblical exposure electrosmog situations, and therefore I see them as the new normal.
Well, that's really interesting. I know I wrote a piece. I called it Canaries, and it is about the canaries in the coal mine ourselves. Um, but it seems like there are just people, and I seem to notice them among a lot of people who have done spiritual work of one kind or another, and also perhaps people who have had injuries to their nervous systems that then are more susceptible to this dysfunction of the body somehow.
Yeah,
And that's just a comment on my part. That's what I see. And I also see that, and I've queried a few chiropractors on this and saying, have you noticed that sometimes when do people report to you when they've had a closed head injury or whiplash or something in their spine, a spinal injury, that they then begin to have certain experiences that are more spiritual in nature, or they tap into other domains or realities more. Something opens up even though they've had an injury. And
yeah,
so it's almost like saying we become, well, here's the word hypersensitive, and hypersensitive to other dimensions in a certain respect, and that this electronic soup that we are surrounded by, in a sense, perhaps it is even acting as a conduit to some other dimensions in a certain way. And I don't know that that's true or not. And can't even imagine a way to quantify that. But I'd like to ask you one more question, and then we open it up to other people and their questions and raising hands and so forth.
yeah, yeah.
So you guys, if you have questions you want to ask, go ahead and put your hands up. Nancy's going to be first. But the most obvious question now for wanting to protect children is, how do we protect our children and ourselves? And what suggestions would you give to the parents, the grandparents, the relatives, people with skin in the game? Because our future generations, we want to survive for the human race, and we don't necessarily want them to survive as robots or as takeover of the human race by artificial intelligence, which some people are talking about these days because AI is all on the front pages. So, what do you say? How do we protect?
Um, it's both a difficult but also an easy question to answer. I would say that parents and other mature adults, they need to listen to people like you and to all the people on this call, to the Children's Health Defense Organization and similar organizations. And they need to listen with the aim, again, to be informed and educated. Because as a parent, you need to go home to your family and start thinking. And, this is the most common question I get. It is from a parent asking me, this cell phone I bought for my kids, is it safe? And I have to say, of course, no, it's not. And then I take a few minutes to explain why it isn't. And then I leave it. I have to leave it to any mature adult, any parent to decide for themselves. And also, what they need to do, they need to contact the local politicians, the local civil servants, local other types of organizations, and don't be afraid, as Mr. Smith, to go to Washington. Today, you don't need to physically go there. You can actually write a letter and send it and say, I need to know, and ask questions. And if I could quickly just comment upon the questioning, it's very, very important that you ask questions that can only be answered with a yes, a no, or I'm sorry, I don't know, or with a figure, a number. I get a lot of emails, for instance, other types of letters and so on. Some are more than 100 pages of densely written text. And after having read the 100 pages, I still don't understand what the person wants.
Mm.
And you need to be much, much shorter. And I don't want to talk badly about a friend, but every time I meet her, she can never decide. And I have to go, but please, do you want to have coffee or tea or cake, or what the hell do you want to have? Oh, I don't know. Couldn't you decide? No, I can't decide. You must decide for yourself. And try to trim down the 100 pages to at most half a page. And and ask yourself, what do I actually want? Um, I want maybe a safe world for my child,
Mhm.
instead of telling endless stories, endless questions, endless comments, and so on, which unfortunately I think many recipients just have to throw away in the waste bin. But if you have a very short question, and sometimes you need to feel your way here, but sometimes it could be good to send the very same letter both to the recipient in question, but also to the public media.
Oh,
And
good.
in Sweden, the public media works quite well, I would say. And they are independent, meaning that they could put pressure on the recipient.
Okay. Thank you very much for that tip for anybody here on the call that hears that, including me, because I appreciate hearing all of that. And I know, and I don't know if you're aware, Ole, in terms of the politic of all of this, is that our legislature in Colorado has passed two laws, and one of them is a smart meter opt-in, And so now some of the advocacy, the safe tech advocacy groups are looking at our new legislation. It doesn't go far enough. It only applies to utilities that are 500,000 and investor owned. And so our personal utility is not that, but it's a requirement that if you get a smart meter, you have to opt in rather than opt out of it. And so, in other
Yeah,
words, you have to raise your hand and say, I want this. And
yeah,
also, it does not go far enough in terms of allowing people to keep their old electromechanical analog meters. And that's something we want. And so, something that some of us will continue to advocate for by going and trying to have them amend this law. But the other thing is that we had a bill passed into law, and the champion of it was our state attorney general named Phil Weiser, who championed a bill to regulate the use of cell phones within schools. And so now that's going to go into effect within, it may already be in effect. I'm not really sure of the date of that. The smart meter one, I believe, has already gone into effect. And so they still, in my opinion, they don't go far enough because so many things are backing the whole population into a corner of dependency on this technology and not being able to be low tech and old school, because now it's all smart appliance this and smart that and smart city and 15-minute smart 15-minute neighborhoods, 15-minute cities, and so forth. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and take the spotlight off myself and leave you in the center of stage, because your birthday was the other day, so you get to be the star here, and we're going to ask Nancy to unmute and speak to you. And Nancy is the one that you spoke with.
yeah,
Um,
I remember.
yeah.
But before I listen to Nancy, may I just quickly add, some weeks ago, I went into a Stockholm store for cell phone things, all of it. And also, they had wireless laptops and tablets and so on. And then I talked with one of the salespersons and asked him if the gadgets are they safe for my health. And he said, Yeah, I don't even understand what you're asking, but of course they're safe." And I left it with that, knowing that not a single insurance or reinsurance company in the entire world would agree with that. They bailed out from any form of responsibility more than 25 years ago. And if you look on the small print, they say that there are exceptions, and one of them is health effects of all types of electromagnetic fields.
So they know that
Oh,
electromagnetic
yeah.
fields cause health problems. And so they say,
Oh,
we're not going to insure that. And the big insurers aren't the smaller insurers kind of under the umbrella or the purview of the big insurers, so that,
yeah, everyone has bailed out. And
yeah.
I was at a conference 2002 in London, and they went actually further than what you say. They said, and they were the Lloyd's UK, for instance, which is the largest insurance dealer in the world, Swiss Re, which is the largest reinsurance dealer, and so on. And they said that for them, the question was not whether cell phone systems are dangerous or not. They knew that they were dangerous. The question was only who in the future is going to pay when people are demanding compensation for health effects, and the insurance industry will not do that.
Well, we've certainly seen, cases like that with products such as opioids, and now there's the Ozempic, et cetera. But that's
Yeah,
not what we're here about. So we'll go ahead and get some questions here. And
yeah.
Nancy, can you unmute yourself? There she is.
Hi, Ole.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Well, the same.
I've been doing some research on mast cells and seeing that they're in every tissue in the body. And I'm especially interested in the mast cells in the dura mater, the meninges, or the central nervous system around the brain,
Yeah.
and spinal cord. And I was reminded of this question, wondering if anybody has studied whether when there's injury, whether it's closed head injury or whiplash or anything like that, if the mast cells increase in the dura mater there.
Um, I should actually know the answer to this, but if I recall correctly, the studies that have been done have confirmed what you indicate, that there is an increase of the number of mast cells, and they also seem to release more of their molecular content, spreading it around them while the injury is active. And after it has been repaired over time, this activation is decreased down to normal levels again. And that's exactly what we saw in the skin. And now we are in the 1980s. That in electrohypersensitive people or in normal healthy volunteers being subjected to exposure from normal household television sets and normal household computer screens, there is quite a dramatic increase of the number of mast cells, and also they look bigger and they release their content more readily. So there is some activation indeed.
Well, in my studies, I saw that mast cells do activate when there's an increase in calcium ions
Yeah,
intracellular, which is
yeah,
part of what would the VGCCs would be causing, EMFs causing them. I'm part of what I'm looking at is the common biomechanism between multiple chemical sensitivity and EMS.
yeah, yeah.
Because I pretty much think that anybody who is multiple chemical sensitive is somewhere on the EMS spectrum. They just
I
don't.
agree. Yeah, I agree with that. And when you interviewed big groups of multiple chemical sensitive people, electrohypersensitive people, and so on, you will see overlaps. Not everyone, but you will see overlaps. And also with dental restoration materials and so on, you will see overlaps between these different groups.
Well, I became multiple chemical sensitive over 30 years ago. That's far easier for people to self-diagnose. Respiratory. For me, it was respiratory symptoms at first. I had increase in the mast cells in the respiratory lining were reacting, and then I would get some brain fog, but that was mainly what it was limited to. But
Yeah,
I am certain that I was on the mild end of EMS spectrum.
yeah, yeah,
And had anybody told me that since I was MCS, that I should reduce radiation exposures as much as possible. I've never had a cell phone. I've never
yeah,
had a router, but I did use a portable phone, and I was exposed to other people's. But I would not be on the severe end of EMS now had anybody told me that 30 years ago.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't think that most people are able to tell that be diagnosed that they are EMS until they're further along in the spectrum, till they've progressed further. And we
Yeah,
need to. I think that this the fact that these are mostly concurrent. I really do
yeah,
believe that you're somewhere on the spectrum if
yeah,
if you're sensitive to chemicals.
yeah,
The mold also sets off mast cells. There is so many things that they have in common,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
and so for the mast cells on the dura mater can be responsible for migraines, which was one of the things that I had, chronic migraine, and that was part of what I'm sure was EMS for much of my life. And
yeah,
it took me until I was really severe to
Yeah.
be able to diagnose. That was EMS.
Yeah.
And so, do you know of ways? I'm looking at things to stabilize mast cells. I'm looking at phospholipids and quercetin and other things. So I'm looking at stabilization of mast cells. Or do you know of any ways to reduce mast cell numbers, or other?
Yeah, I mean, you know it, and you know the answer. And the way to reduce the activation is, of course, to get away from the exposure, either by distance and or shielding, but sometimes a complete removal of the source is needed. And just a few weeks ago, I was on a fantastic episode with Davida van der Walt in South Africa, and I hope to be able to send it out if I can get hold of it from the internet. And that was about how clinical physicians, how would they be able to spot uh, both multiple chemical sensitivity as well as electrohypersensitivity. And it was a very rewarding discussion between us and the medical doctors on that particular conference call. So things are definitely on the move. So if you ask me in another 50 years, then I probably have,
I won't
yeah,
be here
I,
then.
I probably have a better answer.
Well, something maybe this will help you as well in your as you're looking at this, my case, and any of your information that you're gathering on this, I would like to receive. I am
Yeah.
on your email list, but as my EMS, it was 6 years ago that I had one of those tipping points,
Yeah.
where then it was very obvious, it was very severe. I couldn't go into public anymore.
Yeah.
And yes, I live in a shielded house. I'm extremely cautious about
Yeah.
exposures,
Yeah.
but each severe injury pushed me further, and I
Yeah.
got worse symptoms, especially high blood pressure and heart arrhythmias and really life-threatening things. And
And would you also agree that exposure for instance, household chemicals as well as chemicals used in farming, for instance, pesticides, insecticides, that they could produce both multiple chemical sensitivity, but also initiate
yes,
electrohypersensitivity?
yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what I'm saying, what I wanted to, what I've learned about my body, because I haven't had chemicals in my house or on my land or on my body for 30 years. Extremely careful about that. But if someone comes to my place and has any fragrance on, now it doesn't just affect my respiratory tract. It also causes high blood pressure. It
yeah.
caused, as
Wow.
the EMS got worse and worse, now the exposure to chemical causes the same symptoms that I developed when the EMS got severe.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand what are mast cells involved in high blood pressure and heart arrhythmias?
So
And
I would like to interject here. We've only got about 8 minutes left. Nancy,
Oh,
I know you have an abundance of knowledge and wealth of information at your fingertips. Nancy lives over near Durango and has had a terrible time with this EHS. And she's a great researcher, totally in her own right. And when Ole gets his email sorted out again so that people can connect with him, then maybe that conversation can be continued. But we've got at least one other person who wants to ask a question
okay.
before
Can
we
you just
end it.
answer this question? Are mast cells involved in the heart arrhythmias or blood pressure?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
I
yes.
hope you get your Gmail going so I can find out how.
Okay.
Thank you, Nancy. Daryl, unmute yourself.
Well, I thank you very much, Olle Johansson. I appreciate your being here.
Yeah.
I would like to, I guess my question comes back to the Schumann resonance. And when you talk about a cell phone being a quintillion times greater. Is that greater than the Schumann resonance we're talking about?
No, that's the microwave background, like from the sun. There is a natural background field.
Okay, okay.
And
So
you know, you should know more about this because there were two American physicists who received the Nobel Prize in physics for discovering the microwave background from the Big Bang.
huh.
Yeah. So congratulations to the United States, you know.
Wow, that's very cool. All right, so that microwave background from the Big Bang, how big was it? And is there there's no chance of going back from a quintillion to, well, is there a chance?
Yeah, you mean to the natural background level?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just to turn off the system. It's one knob, you know.
Yeah. It's one knob, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a one knob operation.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and that if controlled and serious science shows that we must do that, then I hope that we will be Homo sapiens and not Homo stupidensis.
Okay.
Really,
So
really,
is there a
I'm
hope?
serious.
Is
I'm
there a
serious.
hope? Yeah,
Because
no,
you know
we
we are
are stupid.
yeah, wait, we are talking about toys. We are not
Yeah.
talking about life necessities. Life necessities, that's like clean air, clean water, food that you can eat without risk, love, compassion, understanding, respect. But these are toys. And mankind, we have done very well for somewhere between 220 to 380,000 years without cell phones and so on.
Right.
So it's just one knob, and it has to be switched if we want to see a future. But if we only want to see dollar bills, then we don't switch it.
No, I see what you're saying, and I see that, you know, a teenager who didn't know life before a cell phone.
Yeah.
When you talk about stupid, that, you know, they are so connected here. And so
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
taking
call
that
them,
away,
no, I wouldn't call a teenager stupid. They are just naive. And a society that allows teenagers to run the show, that's not a society.
yeah.
That's a playground.
Very good.
Well, I do feel like, how do you feel about the fact that the whole world is coming to an economic collapse? Is there hope that along with the economic collapse, we may see the collapse of all these cells and things? That and
Yeah,
it may
yeah,
turn
that's a
that button.
possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a possibility. But I know, I repeat, I am a typical Swede. I'm dull and boring, and I am not impressed by the human species. And the other 8.7 million species on the planet, they
Mhm.
are doing so much wiser and better. And trust me, you never see a giraffe with a machine gun. You never see a cow that drinks alcohol, drives a car, and kills kids.
Yeah.
Only humans do all these
Right.
stupidities.
Yes.
And
So,
we need to get together and decide what kind of a future do we need and want.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you.
when I become the president of the world, all of you on this call will be my ministers.
oh, yay. All right. We like it. Daryl, can I interject something
Yes,
here?
please, please.
I wanted to interject this because Daryl organized a meeting last week on 5G in Boulder at the Boulder Library, which was really, really hot in EMF. And we watched this 30-minute movie called 5G: The Untold Story, and it is made about Sweden from Swedes, about 5G in Sweden and electrohypersensitivity and so on. Have you seen that movie, Ole?
Yes, I have. Yes.
You've seen it. Okay. And the question came up in that meeting. I wonder if Swedes are getting on their soapbox about this, are acting up or speaking out to their officials, or are people concerned? Aren't you in a smart city situation in Stockholm?
Um, oh, this is difficult. Um, Stockholm is to a certain degree and has been for many, many years smart, yes, but smart from another type of view, actually. A few people are speaking up, but the problem is not that they are speaking up. The problem is that the politicians and civil servants, the banksters, the industry, and so on, they don't listen. It is
Okay.
as if they don't even have ears.
Yeah.
And you can speak and you can have meetings, you can make movies, you can write articles. If there are no recipients, who are you then addressing actually? And
Yeah.
I mean, on
Okay.
this call, I guess we are all equal experts. We don't need to be informed or educated. We know. But it's the other 330 million Americans that
Hmm.
we need to reach.
Right. Okay.
Or Swedes. We are only 10 million. So it's easier here.
Yeah. We're almost to the end of this call. Daryl, was there anything else that you needed to ask?
Well, I wanted to ask, Ole, wasn't it in Sweden that they did not vaccinate? They did not mandate vaccinations, and they did so well. Not, the population did so well health wise. How is it that they're not standing up against 5G, but they?
Oh, wait.
All right.
Vaccinations, all of them, with few exceptions, and that has to do with international rules and regulations like yellow fever. But for the COVID-19 vaccinations, they were voluntary, not mandatory. But Swedes they are, I don't know how to put this, they are. Um, Gullible, they're gullible, I think you say, in the sense that to this date, I think more than 92% have received at least two COVID-19 vaccines. So they were quick to vaccinate. And in Sweden, uh, as you probably know, there were no increases in general deaths. Actually, some of the COVID years, there were a decrease in the number of dead people, and there were no deaths or harms from the vaccinations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
That's such a rabbit hole. That's for another day. But I think my last question, which is more of a rhetorical question, Ole, is why do you think that people on the one hand can be passionate about saving the bees, but on the other deny the possibility that our wireless technology is contributing to the demise of the bees, and how can we break through that denial? We sort of covered that.
Yeah, we did, and I agree. I think that's a brilliant summary of the whole call this evening or at lunchtime your time, and that's what I work with. And as I said, I always try to inform and educate, and most of the times I think I reach people, but I don't see it practically changing very much. And as I said, when I come and put my hand, could you put $1 there? Then they are gone.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to remind everybody right now to save the chat, and that will have the link to Ole's webpage. But before we leave, I'm going to take the spotlight off of Ole for a second and have it back on me to show you in the background here. This is a map of Boulder, Colorado. And the little green diamonds are the 5G small cells. This is a map from the city of Boulder. And so you can see, if you know Boulder at all, so many of us do because we live here, you have Central Boulder and Crossroads, East Boulder, Palo Park, Colorado University, University Hill, South Boulder. And these are the 5G small cells that are already approved, and some of them are up, if not all. Whether they're, as I said earlier, whether or not they're operational, I don't really know yet. But in my opinion, I'm guessing that this is just the beginning. And so this is the electrosmog situation we're looking at. And I have posted this map also onto the Longmont for Safe Tech website on the homepage. You have to scroll down a little bit to find it. And I believe I put a link to the page where you can go on to a part of the city's structure, site, whatever, and you can apply certain filters. They will be found, as I'm looking at this map, they would be over to my left where that white field is on the left. There's different filters you can apply, but the pole, I think they're calling them pole something, not 5G small cells. They don't really want to give it away, but that's what these are. So with all of that said, where's Ole? There he is. I'm going to re-spotlight him. And I just want to say thank you so much for your knowledge, your wisdom, your work, everything that you are doing to protect life on the planet and to educate all of us. And we are grateful to you.
Thank you.
And hopefully some of that gratitude will come to you in the form of dinero.
And remember that the pollinator field of interest is just one of very many. And of course, one of my major interests is still electron hypersensitivity. But then you have a whole conundrum of other areas that needs to be investigated. For instance, impacts on the immune system. We heard about the mast cell in the dura mater, very important area. You have the impact on fertility, sperm cells, egg cells, the fetuses, the newly born children, behavior, brain damage, blah, blah, blah. I could go on forever. So there are so many areas that needs to be investigated. And it's a tremendous honor to sort of be, as you say, spotlighted this evening together with all of you, because you are experts. I don't need to explain anything to you. And from me, and I don't know if you see little Leif, he's flying around here.
I thought his name was Seymour.
Yeah.
He sees more.
Well, we are having a wonderful evening here. Thank you so much.
Oh man, thanks so much, Ole. And when you are able to communicate again on the computer by email and so forth, I'm sure you'll be letting us know, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so I suppose anybody who's new on this call, if they want to be connected up with Ole, can they be connected with you through that webpage? Because your Gmail is down, they can connect through us?
Not through the website, no, but through you, definitely, yes.
Okay, so if you need, I'm on WhatsApp now with Olle Johansson. We are chatting via WhatsApp. I feel so current.
And my neighbor said, "What? Are you on WhatsApp? That's only for teenagers."
Well, apparently not, because I was in England recently and they said WhatsApp is the thing that people are using to communicate.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know
Somebody my age here in Colorado, oh, WhatsApp, are you on WhatsApp? No, I'm not addicted to my phone. And this, I'm on WhatsApp on the computer, hardwired.
Yeah. And that's a very important point you bring up now. I also have a hardwired shielded system here. There is no radiation at all. And I hope this doesn't mean that you and I come across as less intelligent. The content is still the same.
Uh-huh.
And that's the same with smart meters. If they are wired or wireless, the readings are still the same. The money they earn, they are still the same.
Mhm.
So I tell people, don't be afraid of having a wired, shielded system. You will still be able to watch all the movies, all the internet, all the surfing. You can buy all your stuff and blah, 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 but you will not be exposed. But the
Right.
content is the same. Of
Right.
course it is. It is. Yeah.
Shield.
Shielded. Doe and Ole, would
Yes.
you be willing to, Ole, would you be willing to send through WhatsApp to Doe the science on the mast cells on the heart and blood pressure?
Yes,
I really need that as soon
yeah,
as
I
possible.
definitely will try, but I have to warn you, I'm so very new as Doe is to this WhatsApp, so I haven't learned how to put files together, but I will try
Okay.
my best.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you. Thank you,
yeah,
Doe.
good.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for showing up to hear this very important voice speak to us today. I'm so happy and so pleased that we pulled this off. Some of us on our team are quite newbies in this Zoom call, tech and so forth. And Ole is on a learning curve. We're all on a learning curve. Ole is on a learning curve with WhatsApp. So am I. Tech is really interesting. It's supposed to save you so much time. And in the end of the day, it really doesn't, or whatever. But we are grateful to you for coming. And I'm grateful to everybody and to our team for coming together and helping to put this together on everything, and at least promoting it and sending out newsletters. And we will, for anybody who came to the call and registered, you will be added to our email list from TechSafeSchools Longmont to learn about further events that we will be hosting. So thank you all. And
So
I'd
can
say,
we,
everybody,
can we unmute to say thank you?
please, everybody unmute to say thank you to Ole Johansson. It'll
Thank
sound like a
Thank
chorus.
you, Ole.
Thank you, Ole. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We love you.
Be safe.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody.